So what would be your best argument to an atheist for the existence of God? Like, what would your response be? Were you an atheist at any point in your life?
Oh no, actually, well, seriously, I think when we went to PCAL, I asked a question in a paper about that, because I watched a video of a guy who claimed he went to hell, he saw hell.
There's a lot of those stories, man.
Oh yeah.
There was a pastor recently, I don't know if you saw, that said he went to hell. There's a whole channel on YouTube, Randy K Ministries. He interviews people that have been to heaven or hell. They were medically declared dead. Randy K himself went to heaven. When he died, he was in a hospital. He legitimately died. I think that's a secret that's kept within like doctors. Like doctors hear these stories constantly, but they don't share it because that's not their responsibility to do so.
Right.
And people don't believe that stuff, but it's real. How much more, for me, that's not the best argument for me for the existence of God. But people look for evidence, right? And when people are literally, they die for 30 minutes, 2 hours, people get resuscitated all the time. So, you know, the Bible says to be absent in the body is to be present with the Lord. So when you die, they're going to be present. You're going to be judged immediately. As appointed man to die once, and after this a judgment. So it makes sense if you die for 30 minutes and you were to go to hell for 30 minutes and they resuscitate you and you're able to come back and God shows you mercy. But who was the guy that you were saying? Well, do you remember his name?
I can't remember his name, but he asked a question, and I asked that same question in a paper I wrote at PCAL, because he was asked, you know, if there's a God, well, why is there so much bad in the world? You know, and obviously, you know, of all the stuff that happens, but he asked, well, if there isn't a God, you know, why is there so much good in the world? So
that's true. And then here's another question that goes even deeper than that. What is good and what is bad, and by what standard are we measuring good and bad?
Exactly.
Because it's all subjective if you don't have God. If you don't have that foundation, I think morality actually is a strong argument for God. You know what I mean? Because if you were to say, well, murdering somebody is wrong, but then you say, well, by whose standard?
Yeah.
Because just because it's illegal, there's plenty of stuff that's illegal that you shouldn't be doing. You know what I mean? Just because something is legal doesn't necessarily make it right. And things that are legal in America aren't necessarily illegal in other countries. So are they wrong? And what is wrong? You know? The Bible says that his invisible qualities and the things that he's created have been clearly seen by what has been made. So if you just look outside, I think that's good evidence. I mean, what point is there to live if there's no God, if there's no good or bad? And I think that's been tough for me too, is trying to understand why God allows certain things to happen and why there is so much evil. But with a certain level of free will, people having the will and the free will to choose, you're gonna have evil. You can't have good without evil, you can't have evil without good, right? I mean, there is...
Right, just like you can't have light without darkness.
Right, and with Satan, I mean, he is not bound up. If you look in the Bible, he hasn't been thrown in the lake of fire. The Bible calls him the prince of the air, and he is actually the deceiver that is running this world. So it makes sense that he has children, just like there are children of God, there are children of Satan. And I think God has ultimately a good plan for evil. He allows certain evil to happen, and ultimately, and we can't see it, we can't understand it, but let's say, for instance, a bunch of kids get shot up and killed like what just happened. Only God can turn that into something good. But there's this guy, his name is Dr. Craig, and he argues that everything that began to exist has a cause. And so when people say, well, who created God? God never began to exist because he's timeless, spaceless, he's infinite. So an infinite God creating everything makes sense, because everybody believes, at least to my knowledge, everybody believes the universe began to exist.